What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, YouTube? We're jumping into our Ukraine news. Lots of news happening in Ukraine pertaining to boats, drones. Them drones that Anderson Cooper was telling us about on CNN are really raising some havoc over there in the Black Sea. We have some frontline victories by Ukraine every single day. More victories, more victories. It's so interesting for me to see a military that is winning so much day to day. It's not, you know, they're not taking the whole country back in one day, but consistently when they stick their neck out to take a, you know, to take a new trench or, you know, take a new position, they are achieving those goals. And, you know, honestly, if Ukraine just keeps up the momentum, if the resources just keep coming, Russia will be pushed out of this. But Russia understands that Zelensky's assistance from the West does have a timer on it. He does know that he can wait them out. The question is how long. People are definitely not as interested as before, as, you know, playing Putin's games. Maybe. You know, that's the real question is, can, you know, because Putin thinks that, you know, okay, if we get Trump in there or DeSantis or just a right winger, they're going to be friendly to Russia. You know, Davey, you know, a respected viewer of the stream here, Davey, thinks otherwise. He thinks that right wingers will fall in line to the military industrial complex. I don't know about Trump, but I think any other Republican would. And just all of a sudden they'll start supporting Ukraine, and we'll just ignore all these comments I made about wasting all this money in Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. I care so much. They'll just conveniently forget about that. Trump, though, would, because of the Hunter Biden shit. That's why. Because his ass got fried with a recording, you know, trying to hustle Zelensky, trying to hustle Ukraine to give him dirt on Hunter Biden's. You got any dick pics? Got any of those Hunter Biden dick pics? I'll give you some artillery shells if you give me some Hunter Biden dick pics. But either way, that's kind of the game that's being played right now. Putin is kind of playing a game of, you know, he's trying to a waiting game, right? Fat, bloated, mediocre has been. Chris Christie showed up to do a photo op with Zelensky. Fuck you. That's all I really got to say. There was a little bit of a debate in the Discord. I asked, you know, is this good or bad for Ukraine? I guess it's good for Ukraine, ultimately, to entertain, like I said, these bloated, mediocre media figures. This man has no chance in hell at power. No chance. Not even as a VP. He just doesn't have it. I don't know why he's still on TV. You know why he's still on TV? Because left-wing media loves, mainstream left-wing media loves a right-winger that talks shit about the Republican Party. That's why he gets a paycheck. And that's why we still have to see Chris Christie. I mean, Chris Christie over here looking like Wimpy. Chris Christie looks like Wimpy, the hamburger guy. He does. Wimpy. Hamburger kid. Hamburger, yeah. He looks like Wimpy, dude. Maybe not. Maybe I'm seeing things. Am I seeing things? He's got a little Wimpy about him. Makes me want a hamburger seeing a picture of Wimpy. Moving on from that, there's not much news there. Whatever. Chris Christie did a photo op, you know. That's fine. So, you know, Ukraine gets to stay in the news. I guess it's okay. Whatever. Moving on. Poland taking down another Soviet monument. We'd love to see this. Chem Goblin is especially interested in this. Well, there you go.
Bravo!
Yeah, there you go. That what do the communists call it? The 60-year project, the 10-year project? Yeah. Yeah. You know, maybe if communists stop, you know, pointing to brutal authoritarians as their example for why communism works, people would be more interested in this political ideology. Right now, I mean, honestly, it's a joke. You know, it's a joke, dude. You can't be taken seriously running around calling yourself a communist nowadays. You know, it's really difficult to talk about socialism and the benefits of socialism with all these bad actor communists running around on social media, posting pictures of Mao and Stalin and being nostalgic for the hammer and sickle. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Communist Party and people that are communists need to drop the Soviet era hammer and sickle iconography and image. I know it's cool. I know it's unique, but it's alienating. It's alienating. Yeah, well, I hope for the day. I hope for the day, Woke Patriot. How many capitalists, you know, I mean, do capitalists make statues of themselves? Not yet. Not yet. You know, Mark Zuckerberg wants a statue of himself. Jeff Bezos wants a statue of himself. It's true. They do. Some say Americans will be liberated in spite of themselves. That's a very clever saying. There you go. That's fucking communism. Get that shit out of here. And it's not even like real communism, right? It's like Soviet Russian style communism, which was never, you know, I mean, it was immediately drifting away from Trotsky, from Marx, from Engels, right? The moment the Bolsheviks started talking about communism, you know, it was already drifting away from the source material. Right. So I do think it's fair to say that communism really hasn't ever been tried. It's only ever been this excuse for a different style of authoritarianism. Good point, Keyboard Face Mashing. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, by the way. Thank you for sticking around. As if every statue of every president isn't a statue of a capitalist. All right, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's that vindictiveness that I see from communists that, you know, this, oh, well, we're going to get our revenge on capitalism. It rings a little hollow, right? You're going to tear down a fucking statue of Ben fucking Franklin. You're going to tear down a statue of Ben Franklin because he's a capitalist. I mean, you know, Ben Franklin is not Mao. Ben Franklin is not Lenin. Yeah. Yeah, Woke Page. I'm cool with, like, let's tear down the bull statue, the Morgan Stanley bull statue, right? That's the statue of capitalism. Thank you for that follow, Dunkins. Slam Dunkins. That's a cool name. Thank you for that follow. Yeah, I don't like the idea of statues about individuals, but then again, you have statues of Gandhi and MLK, right? So I think there does need to be exceptions there, but I do think you need to be very, very careful about who are the individuals you are enshrining in statue, right? Because it is very powerful. It is a very powerful societal symbol, right? This person represents the ideal. This person represents the ideas and the mentality of, you know, that we want to carry moving forward. That's what a statue says, right? And it says many other things as well. I think statues are the people of a time, not the people of the past. The statues that are torn down should be revered and holy. It's both. It's for the past and for the future, though. Statue of Ronald Reagan versus statues of MLK. I think I know where I stand on that one. Yeah, but I mean, MLK was a capitalist, wasn't he? MLK wasn't a communist, was he? You see what I mean? It just gets murky. You know, this, you know, I don't know. It's murky. And not that we should make excuses for capitalism. So this is an interesting BBC video put out today. Yeah, Woke Patriot, you're right, but he also wasn't a capitalist. He wasn't a communist, though. I don't think. Do you know that the natives had their own history that predates the United States by centuries? I did know that, yes. He wrote on socialism a lot, but did live in capitalism full life, to be frank, like most people here probably do. Yeah, of course we do. We're all on Twitch. We all have the time to be on Twitch, right? If we were living in a communist society, what would be the value of Twitch? No, that's not accurate. Actually, there would be plenty of leisure time in a true, real communist society. There would actually be a lot of leisure time. So that's not being fair. It's not being fair to communism. But, you know, communists aren't very fair to themselves. Run around the internet posting pictures of Mao. You're not doing yourself a fucking favor, Tanky. Keep that shit in your pants.
Right. Now we're going to head to Ukraine. It's been...
All right. So this is about the counteroffensive. Can it still succeed? The media is still having a long discussion about, is it already over? Is it already over? And outside of the ammo debate, right, this idea that maybe Ukraine is out of artillery ammo, I don't see this shit stopping. Why is this shit stopping? Ukraine hasn't even committed the bulk of its forces yet. You know, there's been more commitment, but there's still a whole chunk of military that hasn't even been engaged yet because they're waiting for that driving, they're waiting for the drive, or they're using those troops to back up and refresh the front line.
2 months since Ukraine's forces launched their long-awaited counteroffensive aimed at pushing the invading Russian forces out of the areas they've seized. The UK, the US, other Western nations invested heavily in these efforts, donating billions of dollars of military equipment and training soldiers. So, 2 months on, how is Ukraine coping against the formidable Russian defences? Well, the BBC's security correspondent, Frank Gardner, has teamed up with the BBC Verify team to assess what progress is being made.
Right, so this is what the map looks like 18 months on after the full-scale Russian invasion last year. If it looks familiar, that's because it is. It really hasn't changed that much since last November, with the Russian-occupied areas shaded in red. Now, in order for Ukraine's counteroffensive to succeed, it needs to cut the Russian area in two. Now, earlier this summer, in early June, south of the city of Orikhiv, there was a battle. The Russian defensive lines are in black here. Let's have a zoom in and look. Here you can see the Russian defensive lines. Heavily mined, interspersed trenches, artillery, bunkers. Very hard for Ukraine to get through all of that.
Yeah.
This verified drone footage here shows what happened when a Ukrainian armored patrol ran into a minefield. Some of the close-up stuff is frankly too graphic to show.
Yeah, okay, they keep showing this video from the start of the counteroffensive. I swear to God, if this is the only video that they have, then Ukraine has been doing amazing. Okay? Did Ukraine, or did anyone ever promise anybody in the media that this was going to happen with, like, you know, clean as a whistle, no casualties, no losses? I'm so sick and tired of the media pointing out this initial, like, because this was a this is a failure. But, you know, this isn't repeated every single day. And once again, like I pointed out last weekend, what's the alternative? Right? Is the alternative just Ukrainians rushing into minefields? You know, not demining anything. They're just barreling ahead and putting caution to the wind, getting more of themselves killed. Is that what we want? I don't think so. They get all these experts. All these people are supposed to be experts, but they're all like, I don't know. And it just seems weird. Maybe they know more. I'm sure they know more than me. Okay, so maybe I'm getting it wrong here.
Show. But the point is that these minefields and Russian defenses are so heavy, they're so intense, that it makes it very slow going for the Ukrainians to advance southwards.
You think
and
Karstein?
The Russians have been quite innovative in some of the things they've done. So this, for example, is their TM62 anti-tank mine. Now, some of Ukraine's armor will withstand a strike by one of these, but not by two. So what do the Russians do? They're putting two of them, one on top of another, to blow up through the hull of an Ukrainian armored vehicle.
Yeah, we know what a mine is, dude.
Footage here shows a whole bunch of these Russian anti-tank mines that have disabled a Western supplied tank. Another weapon that the Russians are using very effectively is the Alligator. the Ka-52 attack
Yeah,
helicopter.
Karstein.
So,
Yeah.
given all these factors, how successful could this counteroffensive actually be?
The Ukrainian forces wanted to retake all the occupied territories, including Crimea. I do not think that that will happen anytime soon.
What Ukraine does have in its favour, though, is some very powerful Western-supplied weaponry, such as, for example, the Storm Shadow long-range missile, British supplied. And these are allowing Ukraine to
Yeah,
hit
Karstein. Yeah.
distant targets, trying to undermine Russia's defences from within. But you know, the problem here is that all of this takes time.
I can tell you, life for the people in Crimea is going to get worse and worse and worse. Because if for Ukraine to succeed, it needs to cut off Crimea as much as humanly possible. You know, not food and aid, but it's going to be, you know, it's going to be an interesting one if Ukraine can get their ass over to Melitopol.
And that's a luxury Ukraine doesn't have. Within 3 months, the rainy season will have arrived, turning a lot of the roads into mud, making it difficult for Ukraine to advance. Frank Gardner, BBC News.
Yeah, they have been warned. Yeah.
And earlier, I spoke to Mick.
Hey, there's you know, Ukrainian-born Ukrainians in Crimea as well, Kem Goblin, but I don't really see much of a choice. Wait a year for the UA to degrade Russia's supply lines in Zaporizhzhia and finally get some air power, and then go those defensive lines again next spring. That might be what needs to happen. I mean, it's, you know, if literally nothing changes, then yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Bryant, retired Major General in the Australian Army and an adjunct.
The question is, how
fellow
long can
at
Russia
the Centre
sustain this?
for
And
Strategic
seemingly they
and
can sustain this
International
forever.
Studies.
How many ammo dumps has Ukraine blown up? Like 14 in the last 2 to 3 weeks? I'm talking massive, epic explosions. You know, millions of rounds of fill in the blank. And there's always more. There's always more warehouses. They just have more. There just seems to be a never-ending supply of weapons and ammunition from Russia, because this is the war that they like to fight. A resource war, an industrial one. We're just going to outproduce you. You know, yeah, sure, our tanks and our weapons are less effective, but there's just more of them. And eventually, if we throw enough of it at you, it'll obliterate you. This is the war they want to fight. Yeah, World War II tactic, but we're fighting a World War I war. You know? This is a fucking trench war over here. The only difference is a bunch of robots flying in the sky, basically. But, you know, these boys are out here clearing trenches like it's the motherfucking, 19 motherfucking, what, 10? When was the end of World War I? I mean, they're clearing trenches like it's, like they're doing the Charleston, watching some vaudeville.
Well, so far the Ukrainians are making progress. It's slow and grinding
Karstein, good
progress,
point.
but we should also remember
Clutch
that this
cargo,
is not
100%.
one offensive in the south. This is a series of campaigns in the south
Yeah,
and in the
Slam
east, where it's
Dunkins, you're
making
right.
more
Yep.
progress around Bakhmut. It's running a defensive campaign further north in Luhansk against a Russian offensive, and it's also defending its skies as well as conducting a naval offensive in the Black Sea. So overall, the Ukrainians are doing okay, but this is going to take time, and we should be very careful about assigning fate.
Okay. Show me another country that has the nutsack for this, dude. Because this is not the first rodeo for the United States. Okay? Remember the Afghanistan army? Remember that joke of a military we tried to prop up in Vietnam? Oh, yeah, they're just doing okay. They're doing spectacular, actually. Have we all forgotten what we're up against? I understand the Russian military is embarrassing itself, but it's still, the Russian fucking military.
Timelines to something that's deadly and time-consuming.
Be wary of timelines.
Keyboard face mask. It's not an issue of money. It really isn't. It's not about money. It's actually, they're doing this on the cheap. It's an issue of political will. It's political will. That's the question. But in terms of money and resources, this is the cheapest fucking conflict that the United States has had to deal with in decades. right? This is easy. This is a small amount of money, right? And you know, and it's different for other European countries, right? The Western Alliance, right? But I'm just saying, it's not breaking the bank yet. It's not. None of these countries have had to enter a total war stance. Not even Russia.
But what about the idea of dominance in the air power? And I remember speaking to Ukrainian officials in the lead up to the counteroffensive, and it was very clear that they felt they just didn't have time to wait for that, however much they would have wanted it. Leaving aside the kind of that decision, give us a flavour of how critical, how important superiority in the air could be.
It's critical, essential.
Well, it's not a wonder weapon and not a silver bullet, but it is important if you want to prevent your ground forces from being attacked.
You remember everyone's seen Apocalypse Now dropping that napalm on the trees? Well, imagine you're doing that on an isolated tree line where you know for a fact you got like 30 or 40 Russians, you know, deep in a trench, right? So you do a flyby and squirt it with napalm. Pretty goddamn effective.
And clearly there are some challenges with that, as the previous report noted, with the Ka-52 attack helicopters. But at the end of the day, no campaign
government buildings.
is conducted at the perfect time.
Lenny
There's
is
no
correct.
perfect
Government
preparation, and the timing is a combination of politics and military preparedness. This campaign will go through till the muddy season, and then we need to be prepared for further campaigns in 2024 and beyond.
Well, let's focus for a second on the...
Yeah, then it'll be Ukraine digging in, solidifying and holding its gains and, you know, looking for opportunities. But, yeah, you know, I think the biggest mistake the Ukrainian military and Zelensky could make is embracing impatience and making stupid decisions and getting a bunch of extra Ukrainian military personnel captured or killed. Right, because you know you're trying to please the West. You're trying to make BBC happy, right? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You got to make your own decisions based off of the reality of the front line. No one knows that front line better than you. So I think Ukraine and Zelensky has been making the right decisions when it comes to how they're how they're dealing with this counteroffensive, the resources they're committing to it. How they're committing them, you know, and how careful they are to demine an area, you know, to clear a trench, you know, to not overextend in areas that they can't defend, right? Ending up getting a lot of Ukrainians captured or killed, right, because they went out too far. They're doing this correctly, but it's a question of political will. You know, what happens when if there's a change in the German government? And because right now Scholz is Olaf Scholz, right, in Germany. He's, you know, ardent Ukrainian supporter. We have Macron in France, ardent Ukrainian supporter. Well, what happens when politics changes that? That's what Putin is waiting on. He just, if I could just wait a couple more months, we got elections coming up in the United States and in other European countries. Maybe not Macron. He's kind of in there, right? But, you know, that's what he wants. He wants the political situation to change, and then he can get a better, you know, he can get a better dice roll here. No one knows in terms of the Russian economy, in terms of sustainability. Nobody really truly knows unless you're like in the Russian government what the situation is, how long they can sustain, how effective the sanctions have been, removing Russia from SWIFT. Right? They're still selling oil. The United States is still buying oil from Russia. Okay? So, you know, it's Putin might be right. Putin might have the right strategy here. And I hate to say that, right? But there is a time limit on political will for this Ukrainian adventure. There is.
Weather. Talk us through, as we head into the months ahead.
Thank you,
now,
Karstein.
What difference it makes, how it changes strategy and capabilities.
Well, at the moment, you're seeing reasonably dry weather. You're seeing a lot of growth and undergrowth, which is hiding minefields, and it does make things more difficult on the
Taiwan,
ground if
yeah,
you're
that's a whole
reaching
other
through
bag of worms.
minefields. As we get towards the winter months with rains, that makes cross-country mobility difficult. It makes logistics even more difficult. So we really need to think about how do we support Ukraine now? How do we support them across the winter months and then into 2024 as well?
Our thanks to Mick Ryan.
All right. Well, you've heard my opinions on this. We're just going to move on to the next video, but this is the fight that's being fought right now. And let me tell you, Putin being successful in any metric, right? And if he takes a part of Donbass, if he takes a part of Kherson, any part in the middle, and of course if he holds on to Crimea, it will set a precedent. It will set a precedent that there will be ramifications. I can't, but I hear woke patriot in my head pointing out that this was also the excuse used to invade Vietnam and sustain the Vietnam conflict, which was, if we don't stop the communists over there, we're going to have to deal with communists over here. It is different, though, because we're not talking about a political ideology poisoning the world. We're talking about an empire, and, like, let's be real, like, one person kind of steering this whole project. You know, so we're talking about one man's ambitions here. We're not talking about the, you know, some kind of like political ideology catching fire like wildfire across the globe. We're talking about a madman. We're talking about a dictator, a tyrant who wants to put his face on the history books, right? It's a little different. This isn't exactly McCarthyism. To be concerned about Russia getting away with its territorial ambitions, illegal territorial ambitions. It's not McCarthyism to be concerned about that, but I could see some of the parallels. I can see some of the parallels of, like, you know, being, like I said, being afraid of the spread of communism, right? Let's be real. America's an empire too. Of course it is. And it doesn't exactly have a good history. No, of course it doesn't. And it is incredibly hypocritical for the United States to be telling Russia to not get involved in a military adventure. But, and this is a big but, how many flags did we plant in Vietnam? How many flags did we plant in Afghanistan? How many flags did we plant in Iraq? How much of that territory have we taken? We do our military adventurism differently, because we don't care if you're flying the American flag. All we care about is, are you trading in American dollars? It's about commerce. It's not about nationalism and the sun never setting on the United States empire. You know, the United States doesn't give a shit about that. Fly whatever flag you're flying, buddy. Right? Are your banks filled with American dollars? That's the question. That's the question. So it's different. Russia is, you know, Russia has its own idea of what an empire is. The United States has its own idea of what an empire is, and there's differences there. That doesn't justify anything. It doesn't justify anything, but it is different. So this is heartbreaking. Prepared, get yourself some tissues. This is hard to watch. Russia is kidnapping Ukrainian children. End of story. End of story. Russia is kidnapping Ukrainian children. To, you know, basically brainwashing them, and hope, and their hope is to successfully brainwash these children, and I guess some of them returning to the front lines to fight against Ukraine, or at the very least becoming patriotic Russians, right? Just wanted to trigger warning here. This is a hard video to watch.
Я начинаю плакать, и 16-year-old Ilona Paveluk is describing the moment she returned home to Ukraine. She spent nearly a year and a half locked away, hiding under Russian occupation. The Russians came to their village near the Dnipro River at the start of the invasion last year. She says she couldn't leave the house, not even to the park just outside their home.
Я не навчаюся до сих пір, я не закінчила школу, у мене нема документів. Ну, я вважаюся як тупа, виходить. Ось. І я нікуди не могла їздити, батько сильно переживав за мене, каже, що ці росіяни, вони там, типу, знасилують мене, там б'ють, ну бувало вже таке там.
Her father died of AIDS last month, leaving her and her younger brother Maxim orphans, and making them part of a particularly vulnerable group amid the war. Orphans are the most urgent cases for groups like Save Ukraine, a charity that maintains an underground network inside occupied parts of Ukraine and Russia itself.
Повернути дітей-сиріт набагато складніше, тому що росіяни, вони призначають законного представника цій дитині. Законного це в лапках, тому що це її представник на заміну того представника закону, який був на контрольованій території. Після захоплення вони і викрадення, вони призначають цього представника або влаштовують прийомну родину, або заклад, тому далі вже ніякі домовленості не діють. І цю дитину забрати дуже важко.
President Vladimir Putin claims to have annexed Russian-occupied parts of Ukraine. As a result, Moscow says it has gathered hundreds of thousands of orphans and vulnerable children there, taking them back to Russia.
So many vulnerable girls. I can't imagine the horrors that they had to endure. It's absolutely horrific.
Ukraine says the practice amounts to forced deportation to erase their
And some of these children are orphans because of Russia's murderous campaign against Ukraine. So the irony is just compounded.
Ukrainian identity. That's a crime against humanity, something Putin has already been indicted for by the International Criminal Court in The Hague.
Знала, що треба їхати, тому що вони мене заберуть на Росію, дадуть мені гражданство і відправлять в якийсь дитдом російський. І знаєте, коли я уїхала, вони десь через день чи два приїхали за мною, а мене вдома не було. Представляєте, як це трапилось би, якщо б я не поїхала?
Ilona and Maxim were able to escape with the help of Save Ukraine, but the journey wasn't simple. They traveled through Russian-held territory, to Russia itself, then to Belarus, until they finally made it back into Ukraine.
Wow.
Details of the journey are kept confidential to protect activists along the route. The pair are living at the group's hostel in Kyiv until they can sort their paperwork. Then they'll be off to relatives living in Slovakia as a refugee. But for now, Ilona is safe and no longer needs to hide.
Wow. And that's just one story. That's just one story, and thank goodness she got out. Thank goodness she got out. I can't stress it enough. There are bad actors that are trying to both sides this. And there really isn't a both sides on this one. There are different players with different motivations. You know, and thankfully, the United States' motivations line up with helping Ukraine defend itself so that these horrors can maybe one day stop. Because this is a pattern. This is not Russia trying something new. Okay, they're not experimenting with Ukraine. This is a pattern by the Russian government on how you invade and subjugate and assimilate a country or a population. This is a pattern that they follow for many other European countries. But it is a program of assimilation, and it's frightening. And yes, Lenny, absolutely, this girl is incredibly strong and smart and brave, and she got her ass out of there. And thankfully, this Ukrainian charity, Save the Kids or whatever the hell it's called.
Я
Saved
начинаю
her.
плакать.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. It's already used under USSR as a pattern in this region. I'm not going to refute that. But I'm not 100% certain. So I thought this was an interesting angle. We don't see this, coming out of Ukraine, but we have coal miners out of Donetsk. The battle for resources as the Ukrainian war rages on. I just thought this was just an interesting perspective. Just a really quick clip here from Al Jazeera, just 2 minutes, just to get a perspective on these guys. Yeah, because I guess during wartime it would be easy to be like, oh, well, you're not a soldier, you're not contributing. No. The soldier needs a strong society, burgeoning and successful society to back him up on the front line. So we need the coal miners, we need the grocery workers, we need we need everybody to be doing their best to keep society going, so that these soldiers have something to fight for and something to come back to. So, and this is it's good stuff. Isn't that for debate? How much better okay, with the beard, it's
Shift
coming
for
back.
Nikolai and his fellow miners. They spend 6 hours every night down this vast coal mine in Makiivka, near the city of Donetsk.
I've been doing this job for 18 years. There's no difference between night and day. Many were mobilized. We should do our duty. If we all go, the mining stops.
The mine is in the
Thank you for coming back, Chrono
Donetsk
Stampede.
Republic, in the coal-rich Donbas region. It used to fuel the Ukrainian steel industry before 2014, when Russian separatists took control of the area. Now, the majority of the coal deposits are within territories annexed by Russia.
We've been walking for ages. It's a 500 meters deep coal mine, 75 kilometers long, and we're heading towards where everything is being done. Now, they're calling us and we have to rush.
These wagons carry coal from the mining area to the cage and to the mountain. It's our coal that we mine. It is a valuable quality that's used in steel production. Firstly, coke is made out of it, and then metal is made.
It complicates things,
It's in
Clutch
demand.
Cargo. You're right, yeah.
It's an inhospitable place to walk, with minimum safety standards. But for the men walking here, it's their entire life, their bread and butter. Too noisy, too deep for them to catch the sound of shell fire above.
I've been working in mining for 31 years. It's very difficult to work here because there is not enough manpower. Most of the young men were mobilized. We go back to the city where our families wait for us under artillery fire.
We are patient.
I'm sorry. Is it necessary to? I mean, I don't see any nails in this, by the way. But is it necessary to make this hole where you have to crawl? You couldn't. You're digging this hole. You're making this hole. Could you have not made it in a way that doesn't require you to crawl on your fucking hands and knees to do your job?
We are Russian people. We have our own Russian spirit. We have to endure to feed our families. The boys are fighting for freedom there, and we are mining coal here. That's why it is necessary to raise Donbas from its knees.
Oh yeah.
That's
What do you think this guy's excuse is going to be when Ukraine takes back control of it? Right.
how we live.
He's going to be out of a job.
Our education is shovel and coal.
The outcome of their effort is loaded into wagons. Soon, the coal will be exported to customers under Russia's banner. Not so long ago, it was Ukraine's. Ali Hashim, Al Jazeera, Makiivka.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I just wanted to show that. Russia attacks Ukrainian grain elevators used in alternate export route. So Russia digging itself deeper with the few countries that are still asses of fire today. So Russia digging itself deeper with the few countries that are still willing to work with it and attacking grain that would go to China, that would go to Africa, all these Russia-friendly places that now have to figure out, okay, where are we going to get this grain? Sets the coal mine on fire during scorcher attackers. Yeah, it's too important. It's far too important, Chrono Stampede. All right, so let's jump in here. Take a look at this video. Russia, and these are intentional attacks, by the way. If anyone's trying to tell you otherwise, this is an intentional attack.
Ukrainian crews battled the blaze at this port facility in Odessa. Kyiv says Russian drones damaged a grain warehouse on Tuesday night, lamenting the loss of 40,000 tons of food. This facility on the River Danube is just a short distance from Romania, a NATO member, and this attack came hours after several foreign ships made their way to that port for the first time since mid-July. That's when Russia pulled out of a UN-brokered agreement that allowed for the safe passage of Ukrainian grain out of the Black Sea, raising concerns about the supply of grain that several African countries rely on. Since it left the deal, Moscow has ramped up attacks on Ukraine's ports.
Loading facilities on the Danube in southern Ukraine.
I think I've heard of that.
That had emerged
mine shafts
over
being
the
on
last
fire
few
for
months as
decades.
Another potential way to get grain to the rest of the world. And
Mr. Glauber says there is enough grain on the world market right now to prevent major spikes in prices, but that may not last without Ukraine, often called the world's breadbasket.
the world has to make that up. And so it should be a concern for not just Africa, but everywhere in the world, that having a major grain producer, operating at 2/3 of its ability.
The UN, along with leaders of several nations, have called on the Kremlin to return to the agreement to prevent food shortages that would exacerbate world hunger. But at a summit in recent days, the Russian president reiterated a message to some African leaders.
Putin is saying, look, this is colonialism all over again. They are trying to victimize you, and they're making profits by selling you that expensive grain.
He boasted of a record Russian harvest this year and pledged to supply some grain to them for free. Abby Kwadasin, CBC News, London.
Fascinating. It's, a couple years ago, if you came up to me and you were like, show me Ukraine on a map, I would have been, right. And it's just amazing to me how important every country is to this global economic system. And when one country is hurt, it affects everyone else. It's fascinating. You would think that that would engender more cooperation, right? Like, well, we have to work together if we want everything to work. And sometimes that's the case, but it's more fascinating to me is that how much division this has been creating. Because I don't want the alternative, where each country is its own fiefdom, and it's like protection. Everyone is participating in protectionism, and trade is very difficult and expensive. Silver lining to geo-conflict, bit of geography for Westerners. True. Yeah. The grain they stole from Ukraine. Yeah. Wanted to show this, to the grifters and bad actors that are always like, oh, Ukraine doesn't want peace. Ukraine doesn't want peace. Is Ukraine pulling out of this? Is Zelensky saying, oh, we're never going to have peace with Russia. We're never going to have peace with Russia. Is he saying that? No, he's not saying that, is he? No, he's just saying we're not going to accept a false peace where we have to give up massive swaths of our country to appease a tyrant. We're not going to participate in that, we're not going to participate in that farce and call it a compromise. But if Russia wants to have an honest discussion about pulling its army out of my country and having a real discussion about a peace, right, some kind of negotiation, I'm here at the table, says Zelensky. I'm here at the table.
Most 40 other countries
I just wanted to point that out, that Ukraine hasn't rejected this, and here they are. No problem. Let's have a discussion. That's because that's what the bad actors are saying, right? Zelensky is bloodthirsty, and he's a puppet of the West, and they don't even want peace. They don't even talk about peace. Well, here they are, right? Okay, where are you at, Russia? Cannot be maintained. Slam Duncan's, I mean, oh man, that's a complicated one, right? Because we'll never know. We'll never know. What would have the Russian Empire done without NATO? What would the Russian Empire have done without NATO? What would have the Chinese Empire had done without NATO? What would the United States have done without NATO, right? Because would have Iraq even happened? Because Bush declared Article 3 or whatever the hell, for the first time ever in history. Would he have gone into Iraq had he not had the backing of NATO? I know. I don't. There's not much value in what ifing that, right? We live in a world with NATO. We got to deal with it. What can you do?
Saudi Arabia is set to host Ukraine and almost 40 other countries to discuss a peace plan proposed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Riyadh says its goal is to find compromises that might lead to a peace summit between Kyiv and Moscow.
Some racist builds a statue.
Since Volodymyr Zelensky unveiled his 10-point peace plan late last year, Ukrainian officials say they have held weekly calls with governments around the world on the topic.
Sorry, Cam.
This weekend in Jeddah, advisors from dozens of countries will have a chance to discuss it in person.
And one of the main aims of this round of negotiations will be to finally fix the common understanding of what is 10 points, what the 10 points are about, what is the formulation of these 10 points, what is the aim of each and every point.
Among the demands, the withdrawal of Russian troops and cessation of all hostilities against Ukraine, the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity to its post-Soviet borders, the return of all prisoners of war and people deported to Russia, including children, and a special tribunal for Russian war crimes in Ukraine, such as the atrocities documented in Bucha.
Russia didn't commit any war crimes. They didn't. How can you restore how can you restore the territorial integrity of Ukraine when Russia? It's basically always been Russia already. Right. So if you're going to restore its territorial integrity, well, you should just give it back to Russia. This is how they think. This is common sense to them. Right. Well, Ukraine doesn't even have territorial integrity. It's basically Russia already. We didn't commit war crimes. Russia didn't commit war crimes. We haven't agreed to any of that. We didn't admit any fault on those situations. We weren't even in Bucha. The sky's the limit on the lies. So, good luck having a real negotiation with Russia, because this flies in the face of the reality of the narrative that they want to perpetuate.
Bucha. The peace plan has strong support among Kyiv's Western allies.
We have long said that it is important that Ukraine be in the driver's seat when it comes to any potential diplomatic resolution to this war. It's important that countries that have not yet heard directly from Ukraine hear from Ukraine.
Not all the parties in Jeddah are pro-Kyiv. India has remained neutral in the conflict while calling for peace.
This Modi
Host Saudi Arabia has a close relationship with Russia, a major trade partner. The day before the summit, China said it would also send an envoy. Beijing has published its own plan for peace in Ukraine, but it lacks specifics about territorial integrity, a key concern for both Moscow and Kyiv.
Don't you love it? And China over here making a big deal of its attempt at peace, not even addressing the territorial gain problem, really. Just gonna, that's such a, don't even waste our time with this.
Their part, Russia will not be at the talks. The Kremlin has called the demand to return territory it illegally annexed from Ukraine a non-starter.
So who wants peace, huh?
Despite Russia's absence, the Ukrainian president expressed his hope that the peace formula could be implemented soon, saying it was essential not just for his country, but for the entire world.
Many countries from different continents, including countries of the global south, will take part. This is very important because when it comes to the issue of food security, the fate of millions of people in Africa, Asia, and other parts of the world depends directly on how quickly the world will implement the peace formula.
Let's get more on this from DW's Amir Nassif in Kyiv. Hello, Amir. So countries are meeting for peace talks that includes allies of Russia. How much of a blow is this for Putin?
Well, for Putin, this does not look very good. It's definitely been a PR coup in the eyes of Ukrainians that you have these BRICS countries. That's the acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And Russia is the R in BRICS and is not invited to this summit, is not going to show up. They said they're going to be observing it. So for Ukraine, this does look like a PR coup. I think Russia is hoping that this backfires because don't forget, Saudi Arabia has also remained neutral. A lot of these countries are also committed to their position that they are remaining neutral, that they're going to show up to any summit that talks about creating a diplomatic solution to the war, not continuing the fighting in Ukraine. And so Russia is kind of hoping here that this will end in disagreement and make Ukraine look disingenuous for putting forward a peace plan that doesn't include any concessions.
How could this process fail? There's no stakes. No one has to agree to any concrete anything, right? This is a breeze. This is a, there's like literally not even, there's a non-debate happening, right? It's literally just a high five for Zelensky, and it allows him to put that feather in his cap that says, I'm totally interested in peace talks. You weren't even there, man.
I mean, these are peace plan talks on Ukraine, but as you say, Russia is not represented. So how effective could it be?
Few observers expect any kind of progress to come out of this, of these talks that leads directly to negotiations with Russia. Ukraine has been explicit in saying that this is not a peace summit without Russia, that instead this is forming Zelensky hopes to form a unified vision with non-aligned countries such.
I mean, it really shows the savviness of Zelensky, right? Because a lesser politician like a Putin, right, would have been pat himself on the back and say, this is the peace process and this is the whole thing. But Zelensky admits it's kind of a farce. And he's like, well, obviously we're not going to have a real discussion about peace. Russia isn't here, but we are going to try to formulate a plan that we could potentially implement later. I mean, just once again, just shows, the down to earth savviness of the Ukrainian PR machine.
As the BRICS countries, minus Russia, of course. So this is a step toward peace talks with Russia. That being said, the effectiveness of the summit could be to show some kind of unity, to give, as the U.S. said, a chance for these countries that don't usually have face-to-face time with Ukrainian diplomats to actually talk through some of their own interests in this conflict. So you're going to see a lot of diplomatic pushes here, but certainly nothing that represents a major step toward ending this conflict, this war on Ukraine.
Yeah. I want to see Ukraine win this war. Silver Widow. Insane rise to his position. We like Ukraine not being taken. Yeah, that's the general opinion. Okay, I don't have time for this one. I'm going to have to come back to this one later. I did want to show this one, Widows. Sorry. Silver Widows. I did want to show this, what is it? Reporting from Ukraine video. Gets into some very interesting specifics about what's happening on the front line. Some of the more esoteric kind of battlefield victories that the mainstream media isn't really covering because it's not big and bombastic. That video does seem interesting. Okay. But yeah, no, this is a very interesting video. Let's jump in.
Day 527. Today there is a lot of news from the south. First of all, today in the morning, Ukrainians launched a drone attack on the Russian Black Sea
the corruption
fleet.
One, yeah.
This time, however, instead of just
I'll find some time to play. It's a half-hour documentary. I don't have time for the whole thing, but I wanted to get into some of the corruption stuff, right? Because it's interesting to see Zelensky's fight against corruption, because he needs to if Ukraine, is to join NATO. It's kind of important.
In Sevastopol, Ukrainians unexpectedly decided to target the Russian harbor in Novorossiysk.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago.
At first, Russian sources reported that Ukrainians tried to blow up Russian oil terminals and that all drones were shut down. Unfortunately for Russians, the footage of the attack got published very quickly this time, and it turned out that Ukrainians successfully attacked a Russian assault landing ship's board. Ukrainian marine drone operators also shortly released the footage from the drone itself. The drone made a hole in the side of the ship, one room was completely flooded, and the ship lost the ability to move independently. The ship was close to sinking when the tugs arrived, and the ship got pulled to the shore barely on time. Russian analysts expressed their disdain for the situation. They analyzed the footage and concluded that not only didn't Russians equip the ship with additional machine guns necessary to intercept such attacks, but the crew also did not notice the drone on time, despite receiving multiple warnings that Ukrainian drones were heading in their direction.
Silver Widows.
Russian analysts concluded that the crew was relaxed and thought that they were too far from the main action, which was exactly what Ukrainians counted on, and successfully took out one more ship.
So they weren't guarding
Simultaneously, Ukrainians conducted a massive aerial drone strike on Crimea.
Spy machine.
Ukrainians reportedly launched 20 drones of various types. The first 3 groups of drones targeted the western shore of Crimea. Even though they were heading towards military objects, the goal of these drones was not necessarily to destroy them, but rather draw attention away from the main strike. That is why the last group of drones managed to pass through a vast area and reach Feodosia. Russian sources reported that all drones were shut down, but noted that at least one drone still fell on the territory of an oil refinery. Some Russian analysts noted that the extensive oil depots in Feodosia were exactly what Ukrainians targeted, so it seems like some of the drones were not intercepted and reached their destination. Nonetheless, there is still no footage of fire, so even though the drones hit the territory of the refinery, it's not guaranteed that they inflicted damage, which happens sometimes. Interestingly, the time of launch of marine and aerial drones was virtually the same. That is another reason the Russians did not prepare for this strike in Novorossiysk. They thought that the target of the marine drones would be Crimea. And they were right partially, because the marine drones split into 2 groups, and one group headed in the direction of the Kerch Bridge. Russian sources reported that Ukrainians attacked the bridge with at least 3 drones. Local residents reported hearing explosions, which is confirmed by the footage. It was claimed that the drones did not reach the bridge itself, even though the footage shows that the lights on the bridge are not on anymore. Instead, Russian sources claimed that one of the drones hit a Russian oil tanker that was delivering fuel to the Zaporizhia region. Interestingly, this was the only ship that Russian warships tried to protect and accompany all the way to Crimea. The crew of the tanker reported that there are no leaks of oil or threat of sinking. The Ukrainians just took out the motor, which means that Russian supplies of fuel on the front will not get replenished. Overall, Ukrainians conducted a combined drone strike in the Black Sea, took out 1 Russian warship, 1 oil tanker, and possibly damaged an oil depot in Feodosia, and most importantly, the Kerch Bridge. As it may be heard from my voice, I got sick, so the next couple of videos may be shorter than usual, as I cannot work as much due to the high temperature. In any case, to close this traditionally, if you're against the invasion of Ukraine and you...
So yeah, I wanted to show that because it's like, I mean, it was quite the operation, and it was successful. So I mean, at the Kerch Bridge, they've put these pontoon like barriers now. So, I guess you would need to blow up those barriers or go under them or something to actually get if you're a boat. I don't know how the Ukrainians are going to handle that. Maybe just another surprise, no, just another container ship filled with dynamite. That might do it. So here's that video of the ship at night approaching the other ship here. Amazing. It's amazing that Russia is still vulnerable to this technology. This is radio technology. This is not like some new technology that's, this is a remote controlled car, basically the same kind of shit you'd get from Radio Shack. Obviously more advanced, right? But these use Starlink. Yeah, so they're okay. Oh, so they are connecting to the internet? Okay. By the way, Starlink apparently prevented one of these operations from happening because they refused service for one of these drones or something. I heard about that. Difficult operation for the military is moving equipment and troops over water. Yeah, water's a bitch. I mean, that's what makes Crimea such a bitch militarily. It's nothing but a big fucking swamp. You know, how do you drive a tank through that? So speaking of Russian countermeasures to, modern drone warfare, here we're starting to finally see that. So here is a FPV suppression system. This is supposed to combat the use of drones, some kind of box you put on the back of your tank. Looks like this. Some kind of EMF or radio jamming technology. Yeah, that's great. But what we've seen Russia have supply chain issues, right? They don't have the fancy chips for their missiles. They're having a hard time making anything, armor or anything, and getting it to the front lines. First of all, do these work? We don't know if these work or not. And two, does Russia have the money to be making one of these and putting one of these on every one of their tanks and ships out to sea and all that? Probably not. Wow, this is kind of interesting though. Look at this. It's the Honda logo is under here. Like, is this some pre-made accessory for a Honda vehicle that was it's just been repurposed? It's hard to tell. You can't really tell if you're viewing the stream, but this says Honda very clearly. They don't need to put it on every tank. No, okay. Either way, this doesn't surprise me to see this kind of technology. Drones, as we've seen, are incredibly effective. So yeah, drone countermeasures. That makes perfect sense. It's not a question of money, but pure resources and human capacities. That's a good point. Russia does have a lot of money, but it needs more industry. It's a reused Honda box. That's funny. Open image and zoom in for us poor viewers. Okay, all right. Let's see here. You can see here this Honda logo. So this looks like, some accessory that you would purchase for your Honda vehicle, right? Some kind of secure, maybe center console storage box, or maybe a storage box in your trunk for your Honda vehicle. But wow, yeah. Yeah, like I said, are they going to have the resources to put one of these on every tank? I don't know. Human resources or otherwise. Honda, it's for maybe Honda motorcycles. It goes on the back of a Honda motorcycle. Yeah. So this is nasty. This is nasty. Yeah, Zeoduke, I think you're right. Lunchbox, they spray painted and tell their troops they're doing something. Yeah, it blinks. It's got a LED light that blinks. It's working, boys. No more drone problems. It's blinking. See, we got it turned on. So this is shocking for several reasons. One, it's shocking just because of the loss of life, all in one hit, right? But what's more shocking is that even after we've saw that incident that happened about a month ago, where a Russian general was doing a training operation, had all of his hundreds of troops lined up outside, just standing with their dicks in their hands, waiting for this guy to get off YouTube or whatever the hell he was doing, to get out there and address him. He was supposed to do a speech. Ukraine had enough time to spot that, order artillery to, line up the shot, get to where it needs to go, and fire several missiles into this training facility, killing hundreds of Russians that were just standing around. Well, here they did it again. They just did it fucking again. Lining up hundreds of troops in the middle of the fucking day, no cover, within firing range of the Ukrainians. HIMARS, Shadow, whatever the fuck, right? Artillery. What the fuck? What the fuck? I mean, yeah, the Russian chain of command is a joke. This is a joke. This should have only happened once. And then SOP changes, standard operating procedure changes across the board. Oh yeah, we no longer gather in groups outside because of that thing that happened 5 years ago. Remember that? That was a big scandal, right? Well, we don't do that anymore. Yeah, I mean, Kirstein, yeah, it seems like it. It's inexcusable. It's inexcusable that this was allowed to happen a second time. I mean, once is bad enough. Once is bad enough. But look at this, man. Broad daylight. Your boys just standing there with their dicks in their hands. In clear view of Ukrainian drones that are buzzing ahead, the Ukrainian drones buzzing above you. You're telling me no one saw that? No one sees Ukrainian drones flying around? So here's what happens, and this is kind of hard to see. This is a long distance view. It looks from like a long distance Ukrainian drone. But you see little puffs of smoke, and this is where the HIMARS, yeah, but I mean, come on, Chem Goblin, right? I mean, like, you don't have Russians like with technology and binoculars, like, 24/7, looking for drones, you know what I mean? Oh yeah, look, there's one 3 miles out. Look, there's one looking at us right there. Right? You don't have observation stations, you don't have soldiers posted on that shit 24/7. Crazy incompetence. So here we see HIMARS strikes. That's what these little puffs of smoke are. It's hard to tell from a distance, but these are HIMARS strikes on the positions that you see here. These guys stand around with their dicks in their hands. These positions are the positions you're seeing getting lit up by Ukrainian HIMARS. I mean, Zeoduke, you know what I mean, man. Like, there's technology. Human beings have the capability of seeing things. Maybe not binoculars with a human, but you know what I mean? Like, something. So there's the fifth one. It's kind of hard to tell. So then, then the troops ran into tree cover. So they all dashed into tree cover. Exactly what the Ukrainians were expecting. And guess what the Ukrainians had lined up for the second salvo? Obliteration. Kind of hard to see Telegraph over here being a little bit cowardly. I should probably had lined up a better video. But yeah, the Ukrainians knew exactly where these guys were going to run after the first salvo and had this one lined up for the second one, man. Just anybody in this radius is toast. You might be lucky if you're over here. Maybe if you get lucky with the shrapnel. But goddamn, Russia. Just look, if this is how you're going to fight the war, just please pack it up. I don't want to see any more Russians die like this. I mean, what a way to go. You're a soldier, right? You're trained to fight on the front line, and then your commander, because he wants you to, he wants to feel important, and he wants to make a big deal of himself. He puts you and your entire battalion or whatever the hell in direct risk of enemy fire. Soldiers deserve better. Just soldiers in general. You know what I mean? People that, it's just, I can't believe it. I can't believe they let themselves being treated like this. All right, folks, for our map update, we're going to jump on over to Dennis. Everyone's favorite Dennis. Everyone loves Dennis. Come on now. You can't hate this guy. You hate this guy. Oh. But we already did a reporting from Ukraine, so I thought I would jump in and do a Dennis video. So here we go. 22 hours ago, just an update about the ships and the drones. Probably the same update that we got from reporting from Ukraine. He usually releases a new video by now, but we're probably just missing it. He's probably uploading it as we speak, but I don't have time to wait, folks. Let's get to it.
Hello, my friends, and welcome. So Russia lost one more ship. It happened. Hello, my friends, and welcome. So Russia lost one more ship. It happened in the Black Sea, but this time not near to Crimea. Let's go to the Russian territory of the Novorossiysk port. This place is called Thames Bay, and there was the accident. So here we go with the video. It is the drone that Ukraine used to target the Russian military ships. And this is the huge ship, as you can see. The name of it is Olenegorsk Miner. The main purpose of the ship is to transfer the Russian military vehicles, even tanks. They use the ship quite a lot to transfer the goods to Crimea after the Kerch Bridge attack. As you see, no one is firing towards the drone. Everything is standard, even though there are big lights.
I wanted to point that out. I'm glad Dennis did too, because yeah, no, it's not being fired at, and it's in direct moonlight. It's in like it's like, here I am, fellas. You know, like you can't miss it.
Shining in front of the drone. So it was quite a calm early morning time, and the drone went into the very nice spot of the ship, just in the middle where it caused the maximum damage to this ship. Obviously the signal is lost after impact. Yes, I know that the image is not very good, but here's the place of the drone collision. You can see there are lots of the constructions where Russian soldiers live, or the other rooms with the very important systems of this ship. In the morning we start to receive the videos from the scene showing the huge bang of this ship. You may see that the tow ships were connected that were towing this suffering ship to the port. The other picture shows again the huge bang of this vessel.
Just
and
barely
one more
saved
screenshot. This ship is really
just barely saved that, man. Just at the skin of their teeth. This thing was just about ready to tip over.
Big. After all, Russians towed the ship to the port, so it didn't sink. But I would say that Russians were just lucky because there was nothing inside the ship. It was on a mission to go back to Novorossiysk.
It was
port.
empty.
After Russia had used it
So
to
it's more
transport their
buoyant.
military across the Kerch Channel. We have already got the satellite images of the ship final destination, the port. As you can see, the ship
How do we
is
get all
still
this
in
info?
one piece. Russia managed to save it. However, I'm sure that it is disabled for a very long time. They're just
Decoy?
unable to repair it fully over there. With that bank angle, for sure there is the big hole inside the ship. So what Russians may do in the future, they may temporarily fix the ship by welding and then move it to the bigger port where they have docks. For example, in Sevastopol, but it's very dangerous for the ship to be over there. Actually, this particular big landing ship belongs not to the Black Sea Marine Fleet, but to the North Sea Fleet. Before the war started, Russia managed to bring it to the Black Sea, just to help with the occupation operation. We have even the page in Wikipedia dedicated to this particular ship.
I don't care. Holy shit.
The crew. It performs the picture of the ship. As you can see, there is the rescue ship just nearby. Probably it performs the operations to rescue.
We fucked the ship up, guys. It's official. It's true. We did. We fucked it up. Okay, is there anything else you gonna talk about? Anything else,
Locals
man?
also filmed a couple of the explosions in that area, saying that the Ukrainian side targeted the special oil line that is used to refuel the ships. Actually, I'm out of clue whether this information is correct. But what I know is that Russia declared that they shut down all of the Ukrainian drones in the morning attack. So maybe they used the big landing ship to shut down the drones using its body. Just right now we have the report about 3 of the explosions near to the Kerch Bridge. Not sure if
I bet you these explosions were on those pontoon barriers that Russia has recently set up.
the Kerch Bridge itself was targeted, but there is also the report that the Russian oil tanker was targeted 30 nautical miles away from the Kerch Bridge. Russia alerted everyone in that.
Chemgoblin, take him seriously, man. Chemgoblin lives in Ukraine, so he's currently under attack by Russia. As the US squeezes those long supply lines along the land bridge of occupation, Russians will try to resupply using more of the Black Sea. They'll be attacked mostly from those fast-moving Ukrainian boat drones. That's about all there is to the Ukrainian Navy. Right now, yeah. I mean, the thing is that the Russian Navy is a joke. Technology has kind of, made these big battleships incredibly vulnerable to much smaller ships with big, powerful explosion payloads.
That area about...
yes. Kerch Bridge. Boat. I changed my mind at 9:14. Okay. Boats. Russia doubles down. Okay. He's just going over this stuff. I just wanted under
his control, including Kiev. Alright, once again about the tanker ship, we have two of the news. Definitely it was hit by something, and the second one, I changed my mind about it. Actually, it was working for the Russian military. It even went under the sanctions for working for the Russian military. I asked from my followers on my Telegram channel to give
the Twitter commies were all gloating. Oh, Ukraine finally attacked a civilian ship. Ukraine attacked civilians. Ukraine attacked civilians. It's all justified. Everything Russia's done is justified now, right? The usual response. But no, it turns out Ukraine didn't attack a civilian ship. It was a Russian military ship.
Give me some of the proofs for that, and here we go with them. So you may find this vessel SIG in the sanctions list.
My
yes,
God,
not all of
we know too much. We have too much information. It's official. Look at this. We got the fucking manifest. We're fucking with the manifest over here. Well, we got satellite photos. Can we get the motherfucking, video, the security camera video from inside the ship? I want to see the moment that the bomb hit and the soldiers wake up in their underwear. I want to see the look on the captain's face. We just have too much goddamn information.
In the social media groups. It sounds very real, so crew reports that everyone is okay, but the part of the ship went under the water reached the waterline. The main engine and technical compartments are totally flooded, so the vessel is unable to continue its trip using its own power. Crew reported that they have the bank for around 2 degrees and the vessel is empty. So in case it goes down, it will not bring the severe devastation to the wildlife and sea life, it's better to say. I wonder if this photo is real. It was shared on media resources. Probably it was taken from the nearby ship. Because as you can see, there are many ships around in this area. Latvia and Lithuania are sending more units to reinforce their border with Belarus. As you know, there is the threat from the Wagner army, which is now deployed near to the border with Poland and Lithuania.
The Belarusian army isn't doing shit.
Let's go to the international news. French officials confirmed that there was the meeting between Wagner and Nigerian military. Just recently, military in Nigeria took the power. It was not a democratic way of taking power, it was the military coup. So now for sure they will start to work with the Wagner army, because we have the information coming from the Wagner official resource that they start to hire again. And
so I haven't heard confirmation that Wagner was involved before the coup, but it seems like the new military government is reaching out to Wagner and be like, hey, you want to help us out? No, we're in charge now.
They want to send more troops to the African countries,
if they got
including
the money.
Niger. However, the president of the neighboring country, Nigeria, proposed to his country's Senate the military intervention plan to Nigeria. I haven't received the information whether this plan was voted or not, but there's the chance for the new war to be started. So here we have Niger, and this is Nigeria. Niger is very important for France, by the way, because the uranium from the Niger is supplied to France as the petrol for the French nuclear power plants. Speaking about the possible resources if war starts, let's go to the satellite image. You may see that Niger is mostly the deserted country, so the vast part of the population lives on the south, very close to the Nigeria border, and Nigeria, as you can see, is the green country. Because of it, Nigeria has much.
So once again, so all the resources focused on taking over Niger is going to be basically along the Nigerian border. So that's another reason why they're all getting antsy in the pantsy about this.
Larger population compared to Niger. Actually, it is the most populated country in Africa, with population of 215 million people. In Niger, there is 25 million people. So if we speak about the human resource, if we may call it, during the wartime, obviously Nigeria wins. Plus, Niger is always in the top poorest countries in Africa. Nigeria is never in that list. I'm not going to compare their army.
All right, there we go. Well, thank you very much, Dennis, for that update and a little bit of world news. It was relevant. Got Wagner over there. It's relevant. So thank you, Dennis, very much for your input. And once again, Chem Goblin, take care of yourself. Out there, very, very real threat of Russia bombing Chem Goblin's apartment while he's watching my show. Fuck you, Putin! I need my views. It's 1/6 of the uranium coming from Niger following the public information of EDF. I'm surprised it takes that much uranium to sustain a nuclear reaction. I thought that shit was pretty, like, once you get it going, it was hard to actually stop. I'm surprised you need that much you need a steady supply of uranium just to keep it going. That's kind of interesting to me. But yeah, folks, there you go. That's the news underground. I am Abandoned Nihilism. Thank you so much, everybody. Your weekly dose of news, and of course, just last week I did almost every day: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Loads of reserves of uranium. Oh, okay. Buy it while it's hot or cold, I guess. Buy it while it's cheap. Yeah, that's right, Lenny. I'm on a roll. Yeah, absolutely. And glory to the Ukrainian democracy, big time. It's like battery and apparels. You need to change the uranium when it's empty. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, they know what they're doing. Nuclear physicists. They know what they're doing. I won't butt in. All right, YouTube, that's my Ukraine update. We're going to say goodbye to the stream. Thank you again. Like and subscribe. Call your mother, YouTube.